Bill Dixon with another edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. Hey, and I'm happy to be here. I just want to welcome everybody to tonight's edition. And of course, if you have never seen me before, this is what I do. I come on and I give you a This Day in Black Baseball History. And like, for instance, this would be the March 5th, 2026 edition. So we're going to be looking at things that happened on March 5th. Now, if you really listen closely, I'll give you something from that date. But then we go way beyond that date, and I go outside and of that thinking, and I begin to tell you things that come from my 46 years of being a historian on this topic, guys. And I can tell you this with pretty much confidence that you won't meet anybody with as much knowledge as I have related to this subject. Now, that may sound like it's a bragging kind of thing, but it's not. Dizzy Dean used to say, it's not bragging if you can do it. And guys, believe me, for 46 years, I've been out here. And I always tell people, I don't have a job. You can't hire me. You can't fire me. I have a passion. And having a passion to do something like history, especially a history of my people, which is the driving force. And so a lot of these players I was able to meet over the years, and now they're part of the ancestors. But I'm glad that I had a chance to talk to them. And some of the stories you hear come directly from them, right? And so I'm giving you information on what they told me. So we're not going to waste a lot of time. We're going to get right in there. So, okay. So let's go to the first one. March 5th, 1924. According to the Vermilion, Kansas Times newspaper, Raleigh Potter, Potter, the well-known colored baseball player and World War I veteran, has died in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And he died on March 1st. And finally, the information was getting to the Vermilion newspaper on the 5th. And the local paper was just now getting that information, that story. And he was the son of William Potter, who was a well-known farmer out in that area. And living around Vermilion and parts of Kansas, people don't realize that there were so many sundown towns in Kansas. And occasionally, when I go out and I speak and I do research, I'm able to find out which towns were sundown towns. And so, for instance, Vermilion was a sundown town. And so there's a story about William Potter. He visited Vermilion in 1914. And when it was a sundown town, and there was a sign, and the sign said, "Nigger, don't let the sun go down on you in this town." And he wrote about that and talked about it. And so that's how we know that Vermilion was a sundown town. And so he didn't mess around. He didn't argue. He made sure he was out of town. And he went back to where he lived. Now, in the family, this Potter family, now remember, William Potter, and that's Raleigh Potter, the ball player's dad. He was a well-known farmer around that area, and he had acreage and things like that. And for the family lived for a time in a place called Frankfort, Kansas. I don't know if you ever look at a map. You can look at this, Frankfort, Kansas. I speak for the Kansas Humanities, so I've been out to Frankfort and spoke there. Had a nice crowd, spoke at the library. I can tell you about that. And then when I was there, I talked about Potter, but I also talked about another guy who caught John Donaldson up in Bertha, Minnesota by the name of Johnny Van. Johnny Van was a great catcher, and Johnny Van was from Frankfort, Kansas. And so Potter lived for a time in Frankfort, Kansas, and then they moved from Frankfort to Topeka, Kansas. Now, they're not that far away. Of course, I've presented in Topeka. I don't know how many times I've been in Topeka to present. But anyway, so they moved to Topeka. And so Frankfort, Kansas. Let me go back to Frankfort, Kansas, because that's an interesting place. And remember, I said I always give you something about happening this day in Black baseball history, and then I give you some more information. Somebody has some questions here. Let's see. Well, let me answer one of your questions, and I'm very proud of this. I started being a researcher of Black baseball history after many years of studying the American and National League and minor league. I was a great baseball card collector, read books and everything. But when I was 23 years old, I got deeply involved in the Negro Leagues. That was 1980. And guys, next year I will turn 70 years old. I'm still out here kicking, man. God has blessed me, got good health and everything. So I'm out here just still telling the story, still traveling and going from there. So that's how old I am, guys. So I'm giving you history that comes from a lifetime of being in this topic. And I see Will once again. Will's a great supporter. Will Clark from Hackensack, New Jersey. Will, I appreciate everything that you do in keeping these names of these ball players, helping to keep these names of these ball players alive. That you're doing a great service. People don't know how great a service it is, but believe me, it's making a difference. That's what I say. And once again, guys, if you like what I'm doing here, be sure to subscribe. That's one of the most important things, because we're building this network. And I love people coming in, especially if you're a baseball fan, because occasionally I'm going to give you some baseball things. And if you're not a baseball fan, you probably say, what in the hell is he talking about? But baseball fans understand, right? Okay, so now I wanted to stop on Frankfort, Kansas. And here's the reason why. Something interesting happened in Frankfort, Kansas, to a guy by the name of Chet Brewer. Now, Chet Brewer was born in Leavenworth, 1900. Chet Brewer was impactful in my life and impactful in the lives of many baseball players. But let me tell you something right here, okay? The Kansas City Monarchs were scheduled to play in Frankfort, Kansas in 1925. I did make some notes here. August 6, 1925. They were scheduled to play in Frankfort, Kansas. So they get to Frankfort, Kansas, and guess what? It's a rain out. So the ball players, it was far enough from Kansas City, they couldn't come back to Kansas City. And so they stayed in Frankfort, right? And that night, Chet Brewer got into an argument with Frank Duncan. Frank Duncan pulled out a knife and cut Chet Brewer on his arm. And it was a pretty serious fight, too. And so it was such that Chet Brewer had to be in the hospital. So the team left the next day, and they left Chet Brewer there getting attended to this knife cut that his teammate had cut him. And I talked to Chet Brewer, and guess what? He still had the mark on his arm. This is when I talked to Chet in the 1980s. We talked about this story. Now, it occurred in Frankfort, Kansas, August the 6th, 1925. And at that particular time, the newspaper wrote that the cut was serious enough that it cut tendons and muscles, that he would probably never pitch again. That was the story. And of course, Chet Brewer was able to recover, and the Kansas City Monarchs went to the World Series that year. They played Hilldale, and they lost that series 4-1. The only pitcher to win a game was a guy by the name of Nelson Dean out of Muskogee, Oklahoma. I knew his family real well. Matter of fact, if you ever get to Muskogee, there is a church, Dean's Chapel, and that's connected to Nelson Dean's family, guys. Look, and I think sometimes they have an online broadcast, so you can listen from Dean's Chapel. But anyway, Chet Brewer was able to pitch after the World Series had ended. I think they went to Baltimore, and they played one more exhibition game. That was the Kansas City Monarchs and Hilldale, who had just beat the Kansas City Monarchs, beat the stew out of the Monarchs, because the Monarchs were absent Billy Rogan, they were absent Chet Brewer, and they were absent of Dink Mothel. And so Hilldale took it to them, and they won that series. So they finished up to make a little extra money. They went over to Baltimore. They played the exhibition game. Chet Brewer came back and pitched and beat Hilldale. And so when they were saying that Chet Brewer would never pitch again, just know that he did come back and pitch again. That's Chet Brewer. Chet Brewer was a fabulous person. You know, I've interviewed a lot of people in my lifetime, and a couple of the people who stand out in impacting me, one of them is Chet Brewer. Chet Brewer, I spent the night at Chet Brewer's house on South Central. He lived right off the Santa Monica Freeway there. I think it was 5th or something like that. I can't remember it totally, but that was like 1987 maybe. And yeah, Chet Brewer was an amazing man. And whenever he came to Kansas City, I always took care of him. If he needed a haircut, I'd take him down, put him in a car and take him down. He never had to drive when he came to Kansas City. And he was just a first-class guy. And I wish that you could have met him. You would have loved him. And the ball players who played for him, and I'll just give you a few of the names, and you will recognize some of these names. They played for his high school team. the Chet Brewer's rookies and people like Enos Cabell and Reggie Smith and Willie Crawford and Bobby Tolan. Bob Watson was another one, and Doc Ellis. Man, I could go on and on and on. And so, anyway, just know that Chet Brewer was first class. And this gives me an opportunity, guys, to say something that, guess, you will never, ever see that in a book unless somebody copying off what I'm saying right now or you read one of my books. And in this book right here, I put a lot of those stories in this particular book, and it's called Wilbur Bullet Rogan and the Kansas City Monarchs. But if you ever read my literature, you'll know that just like this conversation, man, I can take you to left field, even though I'm hitting the ball to right field, but I might take you to left field. So, so now I can hit to the opposite field, all right? So anyway, guys, let me go in here and see if I can answer some questions here right quick. Chet Brewer, that's a picture I wish I could have seen. I understand there's no movie of him or anything like that. Okay. He said, I think baseball is okay, but not my favorite sport. Well, one thing about it doesn't have to be your favorite sport for you to enjoy listening to people talk about it, right? Okay, because we can all learn something new. Appreciate that. And let's see. Okay, all right then. And if you're joining, let me know where you're joining from. Will knows the deal. He always comes in and say, Will from Hackensack, New Jersey. Man, that just rolls off my tongue now, Hackensack. I've never been there, but I hope to come to New Jersey sometime and do a presentation. And guys, my live presentation is totally different than what I'm doing here. And I've received many standing ovations because I can come in 45 minutes, man, and I just go bang, 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 bang. I'm not reading. I'm just talking. And I'm just talking now. The only thing I read is my little baseball fact for this day because it changes every day. I've got to make sure I stay on top of that. Okay, so let me go to another one here. So you're okay. Hopefully you got your Chet Brewer information and you're ready to go. Okay, so let's go to this. March 5th, 1924. Manager Ben Taylor of the Washington Potomacs. Okay, he announced that he had contracts returned for 3 new additional players, and that is going to be Pete Washington, an outfielder, and John Hamilton, an infielder, and a shortstop named Billy Owens. And of course, Hamilton and Washington had played for the Potomacs in 1923. But what about Owens? Now, where did Owens come from? And guess what, guys? I had the pleasure of interviewing Owens. When I interviewed him, as a matter of fact, I went and pulled my file. I went and pulled my file. This is the William Bill Owens file. And when I interviewed him, guys, he was 87. I think I started interviewing him at 87 years old. And now there was an article, matter of fact, this article here, how about this one? There was an article that came out in the Sports Collector's Digest. I have that in this file. And it's dated July 1st, 1994. Now, this is later than I was interviewing him back in the 80s or something like that. But here's the thing. Very few people got a chance to actually talk to these people. And when they did, they would not ask the kind of questions that I had because I was thoroughly enmeshed in Black baseball history. So I'm trying to find things that you could only find out from the players. So William Owens, he went by Willie Owens, he went by a whole bunch of stuff. And so, I would ask questions like, let me ask a question here. I asked him, see which one of them more interesting. We talked about C.I. Taylor. That was one we talked about. We talked about Warner Jewell, who used to own the ABCs, and talked about him being a political person, had a bunch of real connections. And then Owens was born November 14, 1901, there in Indianapolis. And then, let's see, we talked about Benny Charleston, and who I interviewed. That was Oscar Charleston's brother. I interviewed him, and evidently Benny had died in 87. And let's see. And then, okay, so in 1922, Owens said that he was with the Dayton Marcos. And then in 23 and 24, he came to the Washington Potomacs. And then 25, he started off with the Chicago American Giants for part of the season, and then went back to the Indianapolis ABCs. And so he told me that when he went to the American Giants, Rube wanted him to play second base, But DeMoss would always tell Owens, why don't you play your own position, meaning shortstop. And so, but this is the kind of stuff that I have in this file, quotes from him and just all kind of information. And then from time to time, I would send pictures of ball players like this. I would find pictures of ball players, and I couldn't identify who they were. So whenever I found an old timer, I would say, hey, do you know who this is? And I would send him these pictures, copies of pictures, to try to identify people. Here's another one. Here's another one here, right here. This is another picture I sent him. And he wasn't able to identify him. And that picture right there came out of the Jaybird Ray collection when I interviewed him. Okay. And then, of course, here's another article I have on him. It goes back to 1985. So, guys, these are people that I know. Now, I'll tell you what. Would you like to own an autograph of Bill Owens? Well, I tell you what. If you go to my website, NLB Alive, and look on there, there is a autograph you can buy, and it's on kind of like a C.I. Taylor letterhead from the ABCs, and it's I had some letterhead made up and copied from original C.I. Taylor letterhead, and he signed those for me. So you can actually get his autograph if you're interested in that. Okay. So just want to let you know, man, I actually interviewed Bill Owens, who's signing up with the Washington Potomacs, man. And you know what? When I think about this, man, I'm impressed, right? That God made it possible for me to talk to all these people, all right? Okay, so let me go. I got two more, and then Will, you might love this one here if you're still with me there, Will. This is March 5th, 1944. Charles Two Sides Wesley, the legendary infielder for many Negro League teams in the Negro National League, the Negro Southern League, and he was the husband of Clara Smith, the famous blues singer from the 1920s. And of course, he died on this date in Panama City, Florida, and he was 47 years old. And Clara Smith, the great blues singer, she had died in 1935 when she was 40 years old. So some of these people did not live long. And boy, when I think about it, I'm 69, man, I just really feel blessed that I've seen 69 years, especially when I start looking at some of the ages that some of these people were when they passed away. So, and that's Charles Two Sides Wesley. That's one of the great nicknames, Two Sides Wesley. I can think of some great nicknames, but that is definitely one of my favorite. People like Cool Papa a lot. How about Two Sides, right? And, nicknames are not the most popular thing anymore because a lot of these ball players, they just shorten their name. I know here in Kansas City, they have Salvador Perez, and when they want to give him a nickname, they just call him Salvi. In the old days, that would have never flown. They'd have a couple of veteran guys. They would sit on the bench, and they watch you come in as a young guy. They watch how you dressed, how you talk. They looked at what you ate, how you ate it, when you ate it, what you drank, yeah, who you hung around with, yeah. They would watch you awfully closely, and then when you're out on the field, they look at how you played, how you caught, how you threw, and that's how you got your nickname. None of this, I'm just going to shorten up the name and make that your nickname. No, that's not real baseball. The real baseball is how you get these nicknames. So Charles Two Sides Wesley. I don't know if they called him Two Sides because he was playing shortstop and second base, or if he was a switch hitter, right? So anyway, but Charles Two Sides Wesley. Now, keep in mind, he was married to a blues singer, Clara Smith. So if you go back in my Negro Baseball Leagues of Photographic History, I have a picture of Clara Smith. I don't have it. I was looking to see if I had it in this file. I pulled this file before I came up, but I don't have it in there. But definitely, I do have a picture, and I still have that picture. So, but at that particular time, there were several blues singers that had the last name Smith, so it can be tricky. So they had Mamie Smith, you probably remember her. They had Trixie Smith, and they also had Clara Smith, and could be one more. So if you go online, say, Will, and you want to put some music behind it, maybe I'll do that. I'll go get a Clara Smith song tonight because we're talking about Charles Two Sides Wesley. All right then. So So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and get ready to close it down. But before I go, I do want to say one thing. Uh, and I don't know how strong a baseball people you are, but guys, I want you to reply to this question. So I was talking to Ron Hill, one of the family members of Pete Hill, the great baseball player who played with the Chicago American Giants, the Leland Giants. He played with a number of teams and ended up with the Baltimore Black Sox. And so anyway, we were talking about him, and we were talking about how great Pete Hill was and how little people seem to know about Pete Hill. So I thought I would present a question tonight, and maybe some of you right here that are still here, maybe you can respond. So if you had to pick one player to finish off your team, Pete Hill or Ty Cobb, who would you pick for your All-Star team if you could only pick one of those guys, and tell me why? If you could just give me a quick answer, tell me why. Because I wanted to see how much you might know about Pete Hill. We've been trying to promote Pete Hill. And of course, Ty Cobb's name is already made. But Pete Hill is somebody's name. It was made to generations who saw him, but it didn't translate into today because well, just put it straight, racism. All right. Somebody said Pete Hill because he's from Pittsburgh, like me. Okay, that's a good one right there. Yeah, he definitely was in Pittsburgh, originally born in Culpeper, Virginia. I think I mentioned that a few nights ago because Judd Wilson was from Remington, and they were about 30 minutes apart in Virginia. Remington, Virginia. I've been to Culpeper. There's a historic marker there, and I was there with the Hill family when they unveiled that marker. Man, this was like maybe probably 2010, maybe, something like that. I was there into Culpeper, little town there. So anyway, yeah, but he actually grew up in Pittsburgh. You're correct on that. Anybody else want to put a word in or whatever? And I'll tell you why I would pick Pete Hill. Because first of all, Pete Hill had more power. Simply put, he had more power. So he's going to get you more hits, but he's going to hit with more power. That's the reason why I would pick Pete Hill. Ty Cobb, he was a person who really loved that split handle grip like that, and you can't hit home runs with that. And as a consequence, he got a lot of hit singles and doubles and triples, but he couldn't hit the ball out the park. Right? Somebody's looking up Bessie Smith. Yep, that's another one. So somebody said they also subscribed. I appreciate that. Thank you there. And so anyway, so I have just one person. They would say Pete Hill. Well, hopefully, guys, we're going to keep talking about him. And somebody said because Pete Hill, sorry, but I forgot what you said about him. Okay. Well, I probably said about his power. Yeah, he definitely had more power at bat than Ty Cobb. And I proved that in several books. I don't have a copy in here in front of me, but my Negro Baseball Leagues of Photographic History, I mentioned I have pictures of Pete Hill. But if you get my last book, it was called The Great Teams, the 1910 Chicago Leland Giants. I did probably one of the best one-on-one comparisons to Ty Cobb and Pete Hill that you would ever read. And that particular book ended up winning the Best of Illinois Book Award. So guys, I'm just not writing and saying, hey, I got a book on the Negro League. I've been able to write some books that have been appreciated, and they look at these books and they say, this is going to be a classic. And this is one book that you would want to add to your library because it increases your knowledge and it's easy to read. And so if you like a lot of pictures, guys, get my Negro Baseball Leagues of Photographic History is out of print. You can go to Amazon, pick up one. If you like information, I have one picture in that 1910 Chicago Leland Giants book, and it's on the cover, right? But it's loaded on the inside with information. It takes you day by day by day, game by game by game, and you will be impressed when you follow this team. They had a record of, I think it was, shucks, they only lost 6 games that year. So you can imagine 6 games in the regular season. Then they went down to Cuba and they lost to just a few more. But Ty Cobb and Pete Hill met in Cuba, and guess who was the better player? You're right. The better player was Pete Hill, higher batting average. And once again, he always had more power. So guys, that kind of does it for me. I've been trying to keep these broadcasts down to 20 minutes. but they're inching up to 30 minutes. I'm trying to push them back down. So I'm going to get out here probably about 25. Somebody said Pete Hill. I think he had a bit more power than Cobb. No doubt about that. Certainly had more power. And he was as good an outfielder as you ever want to find. Pete Hill was, yeah. So even Ty Cobb had to say, Ty Cobb even called him a ball hawk. So anyway, guys, that kind of does it for me. So hopefully we learned a little bit tonight and maybe had a little fun, guys. I talked about Chet Brewer, who's somebody I think one of the finest individuals in baseball that I ever met. And I think a lot of Buck O'Neil, but guys, I'm going to tell you, I thought even more of Chet Brewer. Chet Brewer was a different person than Buck O'Neil. Both of them were quality people, but Chet Brewer was just he could just relate so well to different generations. It's just amazing. And so both of those guys, Buck O'Neil and Chet Brewer, were impactful in my life. Just know that. All right. So guys, that kind of does it for me. We did our comparison on Pete Hill and Ty Cobb. I didn't spend much time on Ben Taylor, but we certainly spent a lot of time on Bill Owens and of course Charles Two Sides Wesley and his wife Clara Smith and Chet Brewer and Frankfort, Kansas. And guys, if you want to look up somebody that, man, they just don't talk about him, that's Johnny Vann. Johnny Vann, boy, I don't know if he ever played in the Negro National League. I know he had some tryouts, but this guy was just a great catcher, and he played on some traveling teams. And once again, he ended up in Bertha, Minnesota, and caught John Donaldson. And that is saying something. If you caught John Donaldson at his peak, man, you had to have something on the ball just to do that. So anyway, guys, thank you, and I will be in touch with you again. I do want to thank you for all your support. Be sure and subscribe if you like what we're doing here, guys. We're going to build this network. Once I get to 650, then I'm going to start really pushing on getting to 700, all right? And so I'm getting close, and we should be talking about it real soon. So somebody said, Cumberland Posey signed my granddaughter's high school diploma. Wish I still had it. Okay, I've seen some of those diplomas come up occasionally for auction. So I do know what you're talking about. So all right then, guys. We will be talking soon. Feel free to lock in and get that warning. Well, not a warning, an alert. You could call it a warning if you want to, but certainly an alert when I get ready to come on and talk about this day in Black baseball history. But remember, I'm only using this day in Black baseball history to expand the conversation. And so I teach a little bit about this day, and then the conversation could go anywhere, right? And I'll just put it like this in a baseball term: I hit to all fields. All right. Thank you, guys. You have a nice day.